Well, hello there. You can see my messy desk behind me. It's Yvonne here from Women's Fitness Adventures. Welcome to tonight's topic where we are going to talk about taking a closer look of things that happen on the trail and things that we may have adopted as tiny habits that we can look and see if that is what we're about or ways that we can improve our hiking efficiency. So as always, I'd love for comments and questions to come along as we go. Um, and I have just returned from a couple of days hiking in Australia's alpine country. So we did some amazing trails. We did some off-track stuff. We wore those legs. We used muscles, and I'm going to talk about that in tonight's topic as well. So go ahead and say hi. I'd love to have a chat with you. So the first one, and this is something that happens a lot, and I always say that as women, we need to understand what our bodies feel like when they're moving and when they're not moving as well. And one of the great discussions that we had, we generally have a lot, but we had this time was about, most of us are in that age of 50 upwards somewhere, 50 and upwards being quite vague, but in that category. And a lot of changes happen physically to our body that, we may have not done anything different and all of a sudden we're not the same, we're the same woman in a different body and we wake up and go, how the hell did that, or how the heck did that happen? And the things that kept us in the same physical shape or emotional state that worked before aren't working at the same time. So we had, or aren't working now. So we had this great discussion about it when we were down there on the trails, and there were 10 women, and we all contributed to this conversation. And, what we realized is, whilst it's frustrating and we don't understand some of these changes that occur to us as women in mid and later life, is that we were all there and we were all really strong and we were all really fit and we were all really active. We were moving every day. We had mobility, we had flexibility, we had strength, and we were doing things that, people half and a third of our age were struggling to do. And we passed this group of school kids and they passed us on the way up to our turn off to our off track hike. And that is a really powerful thing. So whilst at one hand, we are learning to rediscover ourselves in our midlife in terms of who we are inside this new body. On the flip side is we're strong and capable and moving and having a great time and getting to experience some wonderful, wonderful locations. So if any of that resonates with you and you're thinking, oh yeah, I feel like that, then you're in the right place. Absolutely. So hello, Karen. Hello, Sharon. Hello, Marie. Hello, Alethea. Hello, Ellen. Hello, Kerry. Hello, Patricia. Kerry having some rain. And hello, Christine. Still there, Christine. So here's some things from the trails over the course of the decade, and I may have spoken about them before, but I'm going to talk about them again. Firstly is watches and heart rates, and we chatted again about this morning on my Monday morning hike. The context of wearing a watch, the context of what our heart rate is, really matters. So we can look at our watch, and I can look at mine now and somehow scroll through here, and it will tell me what my heart rate is. So I look at it and I go, oh, I can't even find it. So that's pushing my stress level up. But I could look through here and find my heart rate. There you go. It's sitting at 82. So I've been up and down, rushing around to get ready for this. And I could just look at that and go, okay, well, it's 82. What does that actually mean? Or I can get out on the trail, and I pushed it a little bit hard because I was up against a timeline on the trail, and I got up to 149. And I could look at that and go, well, it's 149. Do I stop? Do I go faster? Do I go slower? But if I don't have any context around what my maximum heart rate is or what my resting heart rate is, then it's a totally irrelevant number. And it's also a totally irrelevant number because our heart rate can go up because all of a sudden we're walking upstairs. And we can walk upstairs generally when we're out going to a restaurant, but when we're out hiking, we can walk upstairs and it'll give us a different number on our watch. What also affects our heart rate and spikes our heart rate is perhaps the heat and humidity. And today was another one of those days where the heat was just pushing us and the humidity. And if anyone's been hiking in Queensland today, it is that. And you know what that word means if you've been hiking today in that. If we're dehydrated, our heart rate can spike. So we may have been out on the trail and it's been a flat trail, and then all of a sudden our heart rate goes up, we haven't had enough to drink all day. So the context of how we're looking at our watch if you're looking at your watch, and what the heart rate means, or even if you're looking at it post-hike and not during the hike, all the numbers need to be looked at in the context of what you're doing it. If you didn't sleep very well, your resting heart rate may not have got to what it needs to be. So always know your resting heart rate. But your resting heart rate can be affected by any medications that you might be on as well. So really important to know and understand these things. And we always say that, a measure of your fitness is, your heart rate gets high and then it comes back here down to a resting heart rate. But if you don't know what that is, then you can't really know whether, when you slow down and your heart rate comes back down, whether you're actually getting any fitter if you don't know what your baseline is. But we also know that if we have stress, our heart rate can go up. It can be, even getting to the trailhead sometimes where, we're worried and anxious about where that is, or being late, or missing the turn off, or showing up to a group for the first time can spike the heart rate, and you haven't even got out of the car. So, the context of what our heart rate is. So I guess the point of this is that, I'm really, and I see it all the time on the trails, is I want everyone to understand that this is just a guide on here. And if you are looking at this when you're hiking along and you're saying, well, no, my heart rate's too high and I need to stop or slow down, or I can't do that because of that, is just know that this is only a guide. The key um, for taking a closer look at ourselves, which is the theme today, is to really understand and know our body, what it feels like to get out of breath. And when that out of breath is just out of breath, and it may not be related to fitness at all, or when that out of breath is, I've just come up some stairs, so I understand and I'm comfortable with that. When that out of breath is, I literally can't breathe, something seriously wrong. So knowing and understanding our body and understanding what this heart rate does. So some ladies, for context today, said, one lady can get, when her heart rate gets too high, she gets a little bit lightheaded, and then she looks at her watch and goes, oh, well, that one might make sense for why that's done that. Others will go on a trail, hike all day or hike for the duration, get home and then look at their stats and go, oh yeah, well, that heart rate spike makes sense because that's the point just after lunch and we went up a hill and I was digesting my food and using that energy to go up a hill, or there was a decent amount of elevation across the course of the day, so my heart rate stayed relatively elevated. But then on the downhill and the flat, it really came back down. So knowing what these numbers mean on our watch in the context of what we're doing or what we've done the night before or the morning or the day to get there really makes a difference. How do we feel? Do we feel that we're putting in a steady effort, or do we feel really distressed? And then you can look at it post-event and really start to map that out. So your watch is really there for, and we've done a masterclass for our members on our watches and understanding all the fancy things that we can do. And if we just use our watch for heart rate, then we're missing out on such value of what we've got in our watch. So your watch is there for information, and our body is what gives that information context. So fitness is an overall trend, and you can hike with 5 people and they're great hikers and think that you're not fit at all, or you can hike with another 5 friends who are just starting out on their hiking journey and think that you're the fittest of all. So fitness is a trend. It is how we individually progress over time. And what does fitness mean to you? Fitness for some people might mean mobility and just getting up and down off the ground. And fitness for other people is being able to smash out a trail in, the same trail that they use for training all the time and bring that together in shorter time. But so our own fitness is a trend of how we're trending up or down in our fitness. If we stop, it's going to, go downwards. It's how we feel, and fitness is also in the context of what we do in our lives. So it's not just one number mid-hike going, this is too high, I need to stop, or this is not high enough, I need to push harder. So watches and heart rate context matters, and it matters for our trails. The other thing I notice on the trails, and I've been talking about this for a couple of weeks, is rhythm and efficiency. And, one of them was how to increase your hiking pace. This was 2 weeks ago, without increasing your fitness. And so that was about being efficient on the trail. And you can go back and watch that over on YouTube. Last week was, hills and how we can improve our pace on hills without, again, actually doing anything with our fitness. And I know many of you tried that during the week because I saw some of your posts. So hiking is rhythmic. It's like runners, it's like horses, it's like water. It's that ebb and flow. And when we find our rhythm, whatever that rhythm is, we should feel this flow and ease. And sometimes, the rhythm when we're going up a hill is a mantra, the rhythm upstairs, just walking along, having, songs in our, not music, but songs in our head or conversation, is finding that rhythm, because when we find that rhythm, it feels effortless. Starting mid-hike costs us energy. It costs us a lot of energy to stop, regroup, and think about starting again. Just um, that effort, and these little micro stops will spike our energy. So if we, have hiked along and we stop at the bottom of a hill and go, oh, now I've got to go up the hill, and then we get halfway, so we've spiked, and we come back down, and then we go again and we spike again. If we're slow and steady, as mentioned last week, then we're minimizing the effort that we need to put in. So some examples of rhythm and efficiency with hiking, even on the flats, is with your water bladder, and we do recommend that because it is much easier to consume more water with a water bladder than a bottle, is to sip and go. Practice sipping water as you're hiking along, because each time you stop for a sip, it's just that stop start. You lose that rhythm, you lose that efficiency. So sip and go, and it doesn't have to be big gulps. It could just be, enough moisture in your mouth to keep, or enough water in your mouth to keep it with some moisture in there. The stop start of readjusting our poles repeatedly. So figure out the poles and figure out, if you are an adjuster for going uphill or downhill, and there's new poles out there now where the handles are actually bigger and you can hold it here. That looks enormous, doesn't it? Hold it here or hold it here. And restarting, stopping your watch when the group stops, and then starting your watch again after the group has taken off. All this little rhythm and efficiency. So working out, how to smooth out some of the wrinkles in your hiking, and getting to the bottom of that incline and stopping, and then going, yeah, I'm going to go up that hill. So just kind of finding that rhythm, finding that ease, and having that mantra of, sometimes when I'm hiking along, it's like rhythm and ease. Rhythm and ease is a little mantra that I use to, if something gets a little bit hard, just rhythm and ease, or breathe and step. Just some little mantra that keeps you going, so it seems like it's a little bit easier. So when we find that rhythm, the trails feel easier. Protect your rhythm. Protect your rhythm. And if someone wants to talk to you and you're going up a hill and it's going to break your rhythm, just go, stop. Let's talk at the top. So the other thing I noticed on the trails, and hello Barbara and hello Leonie, is hiking poles and hiking pole etiquette, hiking pole awareness, hiking pole safety. So often you will find me mentioning to people, do you always hike with your stoppers on? And some people aren't aware their stoppers are on, and other people are. And some people hike with their hands through the straps and others don't. So based on my 12 years of hiking all over the world with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of women, and having guides across the world in multiple locations, is putting our hands through the straps isn't necessary unless the likelihood of a strap falling off the edge and not being recovered exists. And the reason, I'll come to one other way to use our hands through the straps. And the reason that the guides and we recommend you don't put your hands through the straps is that if you were to slip and needed to throw your poles out of the way, if your hands are through the strap, that is harder to do, and the likelihood of falling onto your pole or tripping over your pole is quite high. And I've seen it, and our guides all over the world have seen it too. And if you are hiking along and you just drop a pole because your hands are not through there, you can just pick it up. But if you're hiking along and you trip and your pole gets in the way, it can end up being much more unpleasant than it needs to be. The preemptive to that, though, is if you are on a really, really steep incline and you are powering through, not just, it's not rhythm and ease here, it's powering through, then you can push down on those straps. So a lot more of the effort is taken through your arms rather than through your legs. But for most of us, we're not going that fast, so we do recommend that you don't put your hands through the straps just to protect yourself should you happen to trip or fall over, trip over. Um, and I was just reading a post today about some local hiking group somewhere in the world who is a very experienced hiker and said they were on a really local trail that was a stroll trail for anyone with a cafe on it, and they lost their footing and fell over. So we might think that some of these minor taking a closer look things don't apply, but they actually do. When we're not using our poles, so sometimes we get our poles out and we decide to use them for certain parts of the trail and other parts we don't. Pole etiquette and taking a closer look at our own behavior on the trail is a really important thing. So we always recommend that you have your poles, if you're not using them but still carrying them, that the tips point towards the ground. So you're not having them tucked under your arm and the tips are pointing backwards, because if you stop really quickly, someone behind you who hasn't kept their safe traveling distance might slam into you and your poles, and that's not a very pleasant encounter. Letting them stick out sideways, if you go, I'm just going to stick them in the side of my pack here and the poles are sticking right out the front, you can turn around and catch them on a tree, or if you do happen to trip, you can, kind of impale yourself on your pole. So if you're not using the poles, you're not using the poles, just collapse them and put them away in your pack. I put mine down in the side where the water bottles can go. Or if you just are stopping suddenly and you've got your poles or you're waving them around like this, just be aware of other people on the trail, people coming towards you that you don't know, or people that you're hiking with. Now back to those tips. So some places in the world, you are required to hike with tips on your pole to protect the plant life, and other places you don't. So my recommendation, up to you, but my recommendation is that if you always hike with the tips on, at some point, the spiky bit is going to come through the end of the tip, and you're going to have to really use pliers to get that tip off. So if you don't need to hike with tips, just use them for travel and transportation. So it will protect the tips when you're not using them, and it will not wear them out, and you won't have to keep replacing them or have them stuck on there forever. And the other thing, so trail awareness isn't just about you. It isn't just about what we do for ourselves to be more efficient on the trail. It's what we do with other people around us as well. Same goes for photos. If you're a photographer or not, everyone loves to snap a photo on the trail. And if you just stop suddenly on the trail and others just bang into you, awareness for both parties there. But just say, hey, slowing down for a photo, or just step off the trail and let people pass if they're really close to you, if you want to take a photo. And then the final observation, so four observations this week, is if you are always training and hiking on the same trail and then you go away on a multi-day, and we've just come back and we were so sore after our off-track day. We did some rock scrambling, we did some off-track. Our legs were going in, just load bearing and flexing and moving in ways that don't normally move in our training. And when we go on different terrain, we use different muscles. And I often say, for those who attend our live trail fit training classes or watch on the replay, is that if your muscles are sore from something that you've done, it's feedback that that muscle hasn't been used in a little while, and it's a good thing. Take it as feedback. So if we are on a long downhill and we don't do that in our training, then our quads, those big muscles at the front of our thighs, the quads there, are going to be sore. If we are on a side slope, and we were on our off track, we were kind of on the side of a hill and we were having to clamber over rocks and kind of push it was the right side that was down, and using our poles there. So not only did our arms get strong, but we had to engage our glutes to keep us stable and balanced, and our outer hips as well. So when we went to bed that night, everyone had sore hips. And it's not something that we really replicate on our training trails either. So this different terrain was requiring different muscles of us. If we walk on sand, and I generally recommend that unless you live at the beach, you don't need to train for hikes if there's a small sand component, because sand, if we're not used to walking on it and we walk on it, can do a bit of work around our calves and our Achilles. And sometimes for, us in midlife, it's not the greatest thing. So, for example, there's a hike that we do in the middle of the year that's 100 kilometers, and there's some sand in there. It's 2 kilometers of sand. And we suggest to people that don't train on sand. Unless you live at the beach, there's no need to train on sand. We can manage that without it interfering with anything. Yes, you might be a little bit sore, but the risk of being sore versus the risk of overtraining on sand, it isn't worth it. If we are on uneven rock, and it's hard sometimes in our training trails to train on that, um, our feet can get sore, underneath of our feet can get sore, and we need to look at, is that a feeling we normally have, or is that something to do with our boots? Are they wearing out? Um, and the small stabilizers around our ankles as well. So, most of the walking that most of us do is on footpaths, or it's on gravel fire trails or well-formed trails for most of us for most of the time. There might be small exceptions there. So it's hard to train on uneven surfaces if they're not there. So doing small things like rolling up a towel when we do our squats or our lunges and placing a foot on that gives that little bit of imbalance so that we start to train muscles in a different way so that when we get to those experiences on the trail, we're not so sore the next day that we can't move. And then if we're walking on long, hard, flat ground, so lots of fire trails and, footpaths. So I know some of those charity walks that are long, long walks are all on footpath, and people are really, really sore the next day, sore in their hips and sore in their feet. So, there's a lot of all just different terrain recruits different muscles. So if we're always training on the same terrain, we're not going to experience when we go somewhere else. So for example, some of you I know are heading to the Camino and or have done the Camino, and a lot of that or in part of that is stone or hardened trails. So the feet, you don't need heavy boots for it. Heavy boots are inflexible. We don't recommend you use them on footpath. But that constant day after day on same surfaces will make our hips and our feet sore. So it's really just starting to understand the type of terrain that you're walking on or hiking on, and can you train your muscles in the training, not necessarily the trails, but can you train and strengthen some muscles in the training so that they know what it feels like, or you get out on the trail and you experience it then and get that feedback. Hey, this is muscles that I haven't used before, and that's why I'm sore. So our training builds our capacity for the trails. It builds our, overall confidence, and it builds our duration, and it builds that, I guess, resilience for being out on the trails. And well, the terrain builds the resilience. The terrain builds the way our body will respond or does respond when we're out there. So, if we've trained for distance and we've trained for time and we've trained with pack weight, then we put our body in a really good position. We don't have to train for we don't have to replicate the trails to do the trails. The terrain will give us that feedback one way or another inside our body. And hello, Mel, and hello, Lynn. So when we're on new terrain, it's totally new muscle demand. And, there's probably not one hike I would go on, like most hikes other than my, Monday training hike is, my muscles aren't sore, which is why on those training hikes, we tend to mix it up a bit. We do some hill repeats. We do some, sidestepping down trails. We do some clambering. We do some time-based things as well, so that we're trying to get the muscles to move in different ways. Soreness, just remember though, soreness isn't failure. Soreness is just feedback. It's feedback on that's the specific muscle that I've recruited for this, so that when you go and do that same terrain or similar terrain again, that's the type of feeling I can experience. If you know what the trail conditions look like, and for those of you who come on our multi-day hikes, we give you those trail conditions in our online meetings, then we can start to train for those trails. So the training plans that we give you aren't accidental. They are designed for the specific trails that you'll be coming on. So in terms of taking a closer look at our own hiking, which is what the theme of today's topic is, and hopefully for the last 3 weeks, you've got some little tips that help you become, the type of hiker, more of the type of hiker you want to be. So you're either moving towards some of these or moving away from some of these, is that smart hikers aren't necessarily the fittest hikers. They're just more aware. They're more aware of their surroundings. They're more aware of the trail conditions. They're more aware of the small habits that they do. And those small habits compound over kilometers. So if there's a habit that you think, yeah, I really need to fix that, but you keep doing it over and over, or if there's a habit that is like, this is awesome, this really makes me feel better or feel more efficient or move faster or whatever it might be, when it might be nutrition, it might be hydration, it might be all sorts of things. Those habits compound over kilometers. So it's like our fitness compounds over time. It's like money compounds over time, that our habits will compound over time. So if there's habits that you have about yourself that you think, I should change that, but I'll just do this hike and this hike, it will get harder the more kilometers that we do. Hi, Donna. And the trail reveals patterns as well. So I know, I'm not sure if she's watching tonight, I think you are, is really good at writing her distance, her time, her pack weight, the weather, the terrain, all sorts of things, because that reveals patterns about, probably the first thing, about heart rate, about context, how poles are used, all of those things that I've spoken about. So the trail will reveal patterns. So if you're recording the trail on here or on paper, how you felt when you got home, how you slept the night before, and those patterns aren't to judge you whether you did well or not that day, whether you hiked faster or slower, whether today was so much harder for me, having got home yesterday from 3 full days of hiking in, not altitude, but higher than sea level. Um, the patterns are there to teach you. Is this giving me the outcome that I want, or is it not giving me the outcome that I want? And what is that trying to tell me? Do I need to change? Do I need to adapt? Do I need to lean in? Do I need to lean out? So it's also important to know that hiking isn't about being perfect, because Mother Nature is not perfect. She gives us that lesson we need to know every single week, every single time we go out on the trail, whether we're feeling happy, sad, indifferent, angry, whatever, whether we have things to process, Mother Nature gives us exactly what we need. And hiking isn't perfect. Mother Nature isn't perfect. The trail isn't perfect. We're not perfect. But it's about paying attention each time we go out, paying attention to who we went in as, who we come out as, and those little habits that we have every single time we go out on a hike. And are they serving us well, or are they things that we need to move away from? So that is taking a closer look at our own hiking. So I'd love it if you would like to share your story. If you're watching live, just go afterwards when we finish and drop some notes in there or email me. And if you're watching on the replay, love it if you've got comments about taking a closer look at your own hiking and some maybe aha moments that you've had as well. So that's it from me. I'll be back next week. So take care, and I look forward to catching up with you then. See ya.